Welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Phil Arno. Sometimes the most unpopular person in the room is the one who disagrees with everyone. Well, at the risk of being pretty unpopular with some people, I have to say I think a lot of what's been going on here in Western New York, and indeed around the country, might be considered excessive doom and gloom. My daughter loves New Orleans. Last night she asked me how many cases of corona they had in New Orleans, and I said, I believe they have hundreds of thousands. She looked at me in shock, and then I said, well, just like us here in Buffalo, we love our beer. Now, I gotta tell you, I'm not trying to make this whole thing into a joke. And some of you are probably shocked that I can even think about joking during a time like this, especially my managers who are standing over there and collectively just had a stroke. But that's one of the things that bothers me so much. I think we've lost as a society our sense of humor. We can't laugh at anything anymore. Okay, that's a different show. But what I do want to talk about now on The Big Picture is the sickness that's affecting us here in our community. And I'm not talking about the coronavirus. I'm talking about something called moral panic. What is moral panic? Well, technically, it's defined as a situation where, and I quote, public fears and state intervention greatly exceed the threat posed to society by the element claimed to be responsible for creating that threat. End quote. In other words, the solution might be worse than the problem. Think about it. All over Western New York, people are worried about losing their jobs. Businesses are closing down. The government is telling us where we can go, how many of us can get together. Now, our health is important. We can't do anything if we don't have health. But you have to put things in perspective. Depending on who's in charge, depending on politics, depending on a lot of different elements, things are often handled differently. And let me give you an example. Does anybody remember the swine flu, otherwise known as H1N1? In 2009, the first cases of H1N1 were reported in this country in March. It started out in Mexico. In late April, the CDC activated emergency operations, and the World Health Organization declared international health emergency. By June of 2009, there were over 1 million cases in this country alone. And guess what? The Obama-Biden White House, our government, on October 24th of 2009, a full 8 months after the outbreak, our government finally declared swine flu a national emergency. By that time, over 22 million Americans had the virus, and 4,000 had died from it. Think about it. From March until almost November, there was no national emergency. Businesses didn't close, the economy didn't tank because of a virus, and the press didn't scare America into a panic. Ultimately, over 60 million Americans were infected, and 275,000 were hospitalized, and there were almost 12,000 deaths. Terrible. But as bad as it was, we're still here, and America is still strong. And now I'm willing to bet that most of you hardly remember any of the things that I just mentioned that were a period about 10 years ago. That brings me back to the moral panic subject. In an article written in Psychology Today about maybe 5 years ago, it was explained that, and I quote, public fear over a social problem is mutually beneficial to government officials and the news media. These two entities have a symbiotic relationship in that politicians see a problem and want to tell people that they, the politicians, are there to help and protect the public. And the news media see a problem as a juicy story that will attract a wide audience and hence revenue. They feed off of each other and the problem, and they push the situation into a panic that affects people and their lives unfairly. I don't know if it's just me, maybe it is, but I can't watch the other stations anymore. I just get so tired of them telling me how bad everything is. To me, there's enough misery in the world to go around. So what I'm going to talk about today, well, there's real considerations that we have to think through. There are precautions that we have to take. We need to understand that if we or anyone we know is elderly or has a health problem, we need to take precautions. We need to take care, to take extra steps to protect ourselves and our health. But folks, I want to be a little different than the other stations. The other coverage, I want our position, hopefully, to be as positive as possible, the voice of reason, if you will. And my guest today on The Big Picture is in a position to talk about one very important aspect of what's going on, the economic situation. What should we be expecting in the coming days or weeks and beyond? With me is David Hartzell of Cornell Capital Management, and I might add, David was a supervisor of the town of Clarence for some time. And he's no stranger to the big picture. So welcome, David. This is uncharted territory that we're in.
Thanks, Phil, for your introduction, and I think you're right on. Like Eisenhower said, we have nothing to fear but fear ourselves. Excuse me, Roosevelt said that.
Yeah, it sets the tone, really. I mean, we are in a situation where people are scarfing up, supplies from Wegmans and Tops and BJ's and Sam's. You can't find toilet paper, you can't find soup or anything on shelves. And it's crazy. I mean, if you need toilet paper for the next, cases and cases for the next couple of weeks, you're full of something, but it's not a virus. It's,
right.
There's something that's called going overboard.
Right.
And people, I don't know whether they agree with me, but I think that this is overdone a little bit.
I think it's 100% overdone. I mean, if you go back to 2008, the financial system of the United States was on the edge of chaos. It was on the edge of meltdown. And fortunately, the Fed intervened and pulled things out and turned it around. And the last 10 years, if you have your 401k or IRA, have been phenomenal in the stock market. That was a time when you really needed to worry. But now the coronavirus it's not the virus that's killing people. It's the virus that's worrying people. And the media, as you said, beating this horse relentlessly. I mean, if you look at things that kill people, heart attacks, cancer, car accidents, smoking, the coronavirus, as far as killing people, is at least in the United States so far, is way down at the bottom of the list.
Right. If you step back and analyze what the real threat is, I mean, there's just no justification for the reaction that we've been going through. It's out of proportion. And people really need to stop listening to all the hype that you get from the newspapers and the other TV stations and all those sources that are capitalizing on half the story.
Exactly.
The half the story is, yes, there's danger out there and you should be aware of it. The other half of the story is that it's not that unusual. I mean, it's a virus. Everybody gets a cold. Many, many, many people get the flu. And those things are throughout our society, and they need to be taken seriously. The flu is a very deadly thing, comparatively. The coronavirus, compared to the flu, is almost nothing at this point.
Right.
Even internationally, as bad as it's made out to be in China and everywhere else, in Italy, compared to the flu, it's still minuscule when it comes to the statistics.
Exactly.
But you wouldn't know that by listening to all the news coverage.
No, and one of the problems with that news coverage is most people, they listen to news coverage and they believe it. If you go back to Walter Cronkite, the most trusted man in America, and in fact he was during the 60s, people listen to Walter Cronkite could absolutely believe what he was telling you. But things have changed, and the media has fragmented so much that everybody wants to get their piece. So who can be the most over the top?
And you know what, the media has just expanded to that 24-hour coverage, and now it compounds the situation because now they have to fill those times, and you can't do it by being boring. You have to be sensational.
Right.
And that's the problem. They try and be sensational, and in order to not being boring, they have to scare people.
Yeah.
And that creates a false sense of panic. Now, let's get to the financial part. The stock market has really taken a hit. And again, it's almost like a mood ring. I mean, however people feel, that's where the market is going to go. If they feel positive, you're going to see a skyrocketing market. If they feel panic, you're going to see what we've just seen. It's going to drop like a rock. What do you expect in the next few days and the next few weeks in the long term?
In the long term, the stock market loves good news. We all loved last year with our accounts up 20 or 30%. It was phenomenal. And the market can factor in bad news. You can take a calculator for companies having a tough time and factor close to book value, and people will buy that. But what the market hates is uncertainty, which is what you have right now. I think the good news in all of this is that this stock market will come back. So one of the factors you have in the stock market is that governments all over the world have cut interest rates, including the United States government. So in essence, when this starts to come back, there's no place to put your money to get any kind of a return. I mean, 10-year T-bills under 1%, 0.79%. Who's going to invest their money for 10 years at 0.79%? So I think the news that people should be focusing on is that the market will come back, and when it comes back, it will come back very quickly. This is not an economic problem yet. 6 months from now, maybe, but right now it's basically a press-driven event that depending on how quickly we can get the coronavirus under control, it will come back. Also, if you look at the upside of the stock market right now, there are and will continue to be until the coronavirus planes off a little bit, just tremendous opportunities in the stock market. Now, most people are sitting on their money. They don't want to spend it. But we were talking about Disney before. Disney, Microsoft, Apple, everything is on sale right now. Everything's hitting 52-week lows.
Yeah, buy low. Mm-hmm.
But exactly right. And I'm not saying buy today, but I think if you look at over the next 6 months, people have the ability to double their money that they didn't have last year with stocks at record highs.
And one of the bizarro world elements that just amazes me, the price of oil has dropped. And that's being treated as a negative. And it just, to me, in my experience, when the price of oil drops, that stimulates the economy. That doesn't hurt the economy. Now, certain companies suffer. The energy companies, they take a hit. But throughout most of the economy, it's good for business when gasoline prices go down. People travel more. They spend more money by going out and doing things. People have more money in their pocket to spend on goods and services because they're not putting it in their gas tank. So overall, the economy thrives when oil prices go down. And yet we're hearing, well, oil prices are taking a hit, so that's a big problem.
I think it's a big opportunity. You remember when gas was $4 a gallon, $3.75, $4.75. People were scared to death. How do I get to work? How am I going to pay for my gas? Now you'd think that with oil prices dropping, the media would say, hey, here's some good news. Your oil price, and ultimately your gasoline's going to go down. The price of flying will go down. Industrial production will go up because, like you said, fuel is cheap. But you don't hear any of the good news.
No, so you're hearing half the story, and it's not the good half.
No, you're not.
So, basically, tune in here, folks, because you're hearing the other half of the story. Tell your friends and neighbors, if you want, the good part, this is the place to be.
I keep flipping through my channels looking for the good news because there's a lot of it out there, but I can't find it, Phil. What channel is it?
WBBZ. We're the comfort food for the masses in Western New York.
There we go.
And we're going to start to put some more programming on. That's something to come. We'll be making some announcements on that. But okay, so what do you think now? If you're sitting there and you have some investments. Again, there's a buy low, sell high, buy low. Those are typical. People should be just kind of sitting there doing nothing for now, it's kind of taking it in. How do you judge when it's time to make a move, maybe to buy because the market has hit a low and you're relatively safe, that it's going to start climbing from here?
I think there's kind of two ways to look at the market. First of all, with the securities you have, people have the urge to sell those. That's exactly the wrong thing to do. People should hold on to what they have, especially if it's a quality security like a Microsoft or a Google. Hold on to what you have. So that's kind of bucket one. Bucket two is people should watch the market, even if you haven't been involved in stocks. People know that a Microsoft or a Google or an Apple, those stocks are going to come back. So if you have a little money stuck under the mattress, wait and watch the stock market. The stock market generally jags down and it jags up. So if it's down 1,000 points and it's up 500, then it's down 1,000. You can watch it. But as it starts to turn, especially as the government and the world gets this coronavirus under control, you're going to see the market start to go up. And they'll be able to tell because it was up 1,000 points, down 500, up another 1,000, down 250. And it will jag up just the way it's jagging down. And you'll start to see the press start to turn. And the pundits on, talking heads on CNN will start to turn. And this whole mood will start to turn. And the market will start to turn. Because there's nothing endemic about the market right now that should make it drop. It's not like 2000 where you had tech stocks that were way overpriced. Basically, it's a fear-driven market. And so it's all driven by emotion. So when that turns, and all of a sudden everyone decides, whoever everyone is, that we should be back in, whether it's the pundits on TV or the news people or your average Joe, and the market starts to come back, I think it will come back very quickly.
And for the people who are worried about their jobs and worried about businesses closing down temporarily, this virus, this panic, I believe that relatively quickly it will subside. I don't think it's going to be a long-term situation. I think there will be a treatment that will come out, some shots that they'll be able to give you. They're working on things now. So any interruption in employment and small businesses, hopefully that will not be long-term, and hopefully that will not really have a negative long-term impact on our economy locally or nationally.
I think you're 100% right. As soon as the pandemic starts to flatten out, restaurants start to open again, people start to travel, they start to get on airlines, they even take cruises. They're glad it's over, let's take a cruise. You'll see everything come back. There's nothing that's causing this economy to tank other than fear. I mean, unemployment is low, interest rates are low, so business can expand. Everything's in expansion mode. The United States has a extremely strong financial system. There's nothing that would make it, long-term that's a detriment to the American economy. It's just fear right now.
Well, I got to say this was not a paid segment, but I want to thank David for being my guest. We're going to put contact information up for Cornell Capital, and again, thanks, David, for being my guest. Coming up, we're going to be talking about seniors and how seniors are being helped in this situation. So stand by. We'll be back right after this.